And you're up, Scott.
So first, it's an honor to be here. I always like getting to talk to the regions, and I would like to do more of that. Since I've been executive director since 2015, I've sent out uh, requests to invite me. And I know that your region is one of the more active ones. I have a lot of roots down in that area. I live in Renton, and I did a lot of work with Kevin Poston back in the 90s when he was inventing how to teach percussion class. And if you haven't seen his thing, it's genius. It's brilliant. I still think it's one of the best methods I've ever seen for getting such a desperate, different type of percussionists working together at the same time and improving. What I thought I would start with was kind of start with how the office operates and how governance and how policies come about, because I think one of the things I think that's happening, and I don't know, I'm not a big Facebook fan, and I don't go out there, but I think that there's a lot of people thinking that I've made some arbitrary decisions and policy decisions that have adversely affect the organization. And I want to be clear that Bruce and I both have both of us are at the table at discussions often, especially if it's about all state stuff. Bruce is always at the table, and we offer perspective and sometimes offer suggestions. Neither of us have a vote. I am a non-voting member of the WMEA board. And so what my job is I work for the WMEA board to carry out their wishes. So when policy comes up, what I do is I organize the meeting. I try to get the board the information, and I am involved with discussions that they discuss, and then they take a vote. And one of the votes that's not there is mine, and neither is Bruce's. So what we're charged with is we're charged with carrying out what the board decides is policy. Okay, and I'm not trying to pass the buck. I want to make sure that's a clear thing, because I even have to explain that to new members of the board. A lot of them think that I'm in charge of the board, and I'm not. I'm in charge in running operations and trying to make meetings work and all that kind of stuff. So if there's any questions on that, please jump in. I don't want to take too much time with that, because I know we're more interested in what's going on with this housing policy. So I'm jumping in there. As you know, as teachers, more than almost anybody, the last decade has seen a strong increase in students identifying their preferences and their preferences in gender identification and in sexual preference and all of those kinds of things. These are things that are more of a reality than probably most of us had when we were in school. And certainly when I'm kind of old. I was in the school and I was in high school in the 70s. So in about 2016, WMEA adopted a gender identification policy, and it basically paralleled what we had seen going on in school districts. We had conferred with various school districts and did several readings of it to make sure that it kind of conformed with that, and also with WIAA, who also has a policy. The reason that came about is that the issues of gender started appearing at our all-state events, sometimes before the event, so we knew about it, and we could talk with parents and teachers and things, and work with them to decide what was the best way to handle things. And sometimes it happened after the event was over, and we would get a letter from a parent. So that's one issue that started developing this thing of, well, what are we going to do about this? And more recently, I mean, I guess one of the things that became clear to us as well is in students identifying their sexual preferences. If you have a couple of people in a room that are say men that are boys that are identifying as gay, and you put them in the same bed, that's like putting a boy and a girl in the same bed. For it, I mean, for lack of any better explanation. And one of the difficulties we had in trying to vet that out is, I think if I'm understanding things right, teachers are not to be giving out student private information, which is fine. We understand that. Now, I did a lot of work talking with our attorney and about that, and we could, as an organization, legally ask for that kind of information in our applications. As an organization, we thought that that might be a little distasteful to school districts who we need the support to actually run the event. So we didn't do that. So that was another thing so we were back to, well, how do we handle this if we don't know? We handled it fine when we knew. And I think for the most part, the students, and it's a very, 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 very small number, one if any, usually in an all-state year. But and I think that for the most part, the way that we've handled it when we've known in advance, everybody's been happy with. Where the unhappiness comes is when somebody finds out that a body that appears to be male spent the weekend in a room with females, for example. And so, and although that's the way that a district policy would handle that, we don't know the students. In a district policy, you might know the students better, and the students know the students. And just to be kind of clear on this, so that you understand that I have some understanding of this, I have a trans child who is participating in boys PE and is identifying as a male at his school. And we're adjusting, and I love my kid very much, but I'm seeing these issues not only from an institutional side but also for personally. So let's jump into a couple things, and then if you want to fire some questions, I'll try to get through this part, and then you guys can fire some questions or whatever. So I'll let Bruce talk about the nuts and bolts of the policy as far as how it affects you guys. But I wanted to first just throw that out there that this is related a lot to gender LGBTQ issues and how we effectively manage those, so that all of our constituents feel like they're safe and protected at our events. Another thing that has come up in terms of what people are wondering is, what about the all-state fees? And so that's not a stagnant thing. And you guys have run events, and I know in this region that you guys are in is pretty active, and you run events, and so you know. And honestly, the thing that is the most expensive in these events is food. Food goes up by about 20% every year, or every conference. And in the Northwest years, food's more expensive than it is in Yakima. But Yakima is catching up. I'm looking at catering right now for conference things, and wow. I mean, it's gone up a lot since 2020. So the price for the event, as we've always run it, for two days is $350, and in 2020 it was $385. So it looks like we only knocked off 35 bucks. But actually, what was budgeted was $422. So we knocked off closer to $75. And in reality also, our YME funds actually, without anybody seeing it, before we even make prices available, about 15% of the prices are reduced from the YME fund to help pay for costs. So the actual price without YME would have been $485 with rooms. So because of how the room policy was, there were 4 students in a room. So if a room cost $200 for the weekend, you know, they vary depending on the hotel, but if they cost $200 for the weekend, then that's $50 per student. So actually it averages a little higher than that, but that's an easy number to just put in your head. So that's part of the reason that it doesn't look like the prices came down that much, but we did pull the cost of having chaperones, and we pulled the cost of the student rooms out of the fees. The catering, the being able to feed people is still expensive. And the hotels are getting more expensive too. A lot of them are over $100, and some of them are even up to about $150 a night now. When it used to average about $78 a night in Yakima. So, and then let me look at my notes here. Just the last sort of thing, a couple things that we're doing. I did hire a new, a new person that is kind of replacing, on the surface is replacing Mario as the editor, but he also has some background in development and you know, doing things like talking to corporations about underwriting things. And we're looking at some of that kind of thing. But I want to be honest about this. I've been a nonprofit since 1991. And the one thing that has been consistent from that time, and actually from well before that time, is that in most nonprofit organizations, the largest contingency of donors are individuals. And the national number is something like 15% of nonprofit support comes from corporate and other sponsors. 85% comes from individual donors, and that can vary a little bit that's kind of a national average. And so we're going to work on that too. And I feel like the members are stakeholders. And I feel also that some of the parents and families are stakeholders, and that's going to be something that we look at. I think that a bunch of small donations could make Allstate free in an ideal world. If we have 1,400 members that donate $120 a year, Allstate's free. We can pay for hotels, we can pay for the conductors, everything. So those are kind of things that we're working from. I'll take questions if you want, or turn it over to Bruce. I know it's mind-boggling, isn't it?
So as far as specifics, I don't know if everybody's had a chance to look at, or if you had Allstate kids audition this year, but in the application packet that was posted along with all the audition materials, page 4 of that packet detailed our plans to date as to how things will unfold in Yakima. And so I don't know if folks have seen that or not. I gave Daisy a copy of that one page as well, so she's got it for you if you want it. But basically, and I really can't add anything more. We don't know anything more than what you'll see on that one page of the application packet. But the bottom line is that the only change, recognizing that it's a very big change, but the only change is that teachers working with the school, working with parents are going to be making their own housing arrangements within the block of hotels that we offer. So we will not be making the actual reservations for your selected students as we had in the past. We won't be determining who's going to be rooming with one another as we had in the past. That's going to sit with the schoolhouse now with teachers, knowing your kids best. And so that's the fundamental change, is that you as teachers will be making those reservations from within our block. And in addition to that, we'll be providing chaperone or chaperones per your district guidelines. So, but other than that, nothing changes. So basically what happens is when you transport kids to Yakima to check in, they're going to check into their hotel room that you have reserved. And they're going to drop all their gear. And then you're going to see that they get to their first rehearsal. From the point of the first rehearsal, once it concludes that evening, we will take them back to their hotel and turn them over to the designated chaperone, who will take responsibility for those kids overnight. Then in the morning, we will circle back around with buses, pick the kids up, we'll feed them their meals during the day. So there's no meal responsibility on the part of the chaperones or teachers. We'll rehearse, do our activities, and repeat the process at night. We'll take them back to the hotel, turn them over to the chaperone for the chaperone to supervise overnight, and then we repeat the process that last day. So that's basically it, and that really is the only change. But again, recognizing that it's a very big change to how we've done business in the past. Any questions on that? Okay. Scott, did I get that right?
I think so. Yeah, very good. I also want to just, I guess one of the things I also would like to just emphasize, there's a lot of familiar faces here. Actually, I've seen a lot of you guys. I know a lot of you, but I want you to feel free to email me, even if you're rip roaring mad. Please, it's fine for you to do that. My job is to find out what's going on in the field, what people are thinking. I am a voice that gets into the board meeting rooms. And if there's things that we want to change, or if there's things that we're wondering, or if there's things that we think that the association should be doing, I'm a good conduit, at least getting that process started. And Bruce is as well. Bruce has a great system as far as when we're dealing with the solo and ensemble rule changes and things like that. There's a nice long process so that the membership has a chance to look over those proposed rule changes before the board votes. And if we get a lot of suggestions to say, no, these rule changes are no good, the board's not going to put them through. So your voice does matter, you know, and your board is supposed to be representing you just like your congressmen are and your legislators are. We're supposed to be doing that, but the only way we can do that is through communication. And so I really encourage you to talk to us. And if you have ideas about how we might more gracefully do this policy, I'm all ears, because this has been about 6 or 7 years in the making, actually, in many ways, in trying to figure out how to solve these problems. And the not solving it and still offering housing can be devastating for us. So I definitely am, and then the board members are too. We're open to creative thinking on this, and certainly want to answer people's questions. I'll say too, I think that there's some criticism about how this came down. and I can take some blame for that. It's hard when something's being discussed to send out an email to the members and go, you guys, this is being discussed. When I don't know where it's going to end up, you know? And I think it seemed sort of, you know, really just all of a sudden that this email came out that you know, we've got this policy change, and I'm not sure how to fix that, but I will say that was something that's a complaint that I've heard around the field, around the state, that it was just all of a sudden and we didn't talk to anybody. We did talk to people. There was a committee, an all-state housing committee, but that committee actually was formed once the policy was decided. And I did send out an invitation for people to be involved with that. And we ended up with, I don't remember how many people ended up on a committee, but it was close to 8 or 10 people. And the state was fairly well represented. We had people from Eastern Washington and the South and Seattle area, and a couple board members and things. But you know, it could always be better. That for sure. How many of you, just out of curiosity, have done board service outside of in this organization or in other organizations? You ever done? It's I actually, there's two things that NAFME has done for me as a kind of a citizen. One is that I go out before the pandemic, we were always sent out to go talk to the Congress in June every year for the National Assembly. And I began to see those people differently than I see them when I watch them on my chosen news sources. For example, somebody that I voted against, I had a conversation in the hall with him for almost a half hour. He just stood there and talked to me. Dave Reichert just talked to me, and he was so excited about that we were coming to talk to him about music, and he was excited to tell me about the musical people in his family and all this stuff. And there's other people too. There's people who, there's several people that really kind of see things a little differently than I do, but they all see music as being valuable. And so I've learned to kind of modify my views of what I see on the news, but I've also gained respect for representative government. And you get insights into this in our board meetings and stuff, and how like this decision in some ways for us was one of these. You know, we don't really want to do this, but we have to do it. But there was a lot of thoughtful conversation in the housing committee about what to do and how to make it fair, and all of those things. And for me, that was a really great sign of how good governance works, and how important it is for people to talk and not just, you know, I think it's important to point out the problems and even be mad. It's okay to be mad, but to point them out and then start to problem solve. And the teachers in this organization are amazing that way. I know Bruce had a meeting in his region, and the people just rolled up their sleeves and started, you know, just talking about stuff. And this is one of the things that we do really well. And I see a history of this. I mean, I've only been here, I'm still kind of a new guy. I've been here 6 years, but I look at what's gone on clear back into the 1980s and how Allstate developed and how this annual fund. I think that the people before us, and one of the people before us is still in your district, Kevin Postian was a president. I think that they saw this moment coming when they created an annual fund and eventually called it YME, and tried to find ways to learn to fund this thing with money other than fees. And you know, my goal since becoming a director was to get that so that that funding was high enough that we could start talking about making it free. Right now, it's about 15% of the fees come off. And like I said, so a cup of coffee a month for all of our members would cut the fees down to below $300 at the current rates. 2 cups of coffee a month would get it down below $200, the fees. And what I'm talking about, cup of coffee, I'm thinking like $5. So if somebody did an annual giving $5 a month, and we had 1,400 people doing that, that's about $85,000. You know, so Allstate could be free if we want it to be. You know, there's a little bit of a sacrifice involved, and you know, and I donate to YME, and I also donate time and money to the Music Matters funds. So, and those are both, those kind of cover both ends. The YME covers kind of the talented end, and the Music Matters covers the schools that are having troubles getting new music stands, or getting a marimba, or repairing the flutes, you know, putting new pads on the saxophones and things like that. So these are all things that we've put into place as an association to help. It's pretty quiet out there. I'm wondering if you have any questions.
Hey,
Polly,
Scott.
how are you?
I'm good. How are you? Good to see your
Good.
face. Good to
You
hear your
too.
voice. You and Bruce. Bruce has got fun hair today. I was just, it was kind of an eye-opening experience for me as a member to get the email about the whole funding issue and where money goes to and all of that stuff. See, I do the dues, you know, and I am a member, yay.
Mhm.
And I didn't realize that a conference, you know, putting together the big conference is a huge part of our money making adventure. Just, it was so eye opening just to get that email and go, well, not very many of us participated in that last conference because we were burnt out. Just
Oh yeah.
like, please do not make us do another Zoom thing. Oh my gosh, I'm going to die. And I was there. I was like in the heat of that moment. I'm like, no, I just need to see the sky. And please just no. And then that email came out and I was like, oh my God. I had no idea that that's what's happening and that's where our funds go to. And I was like, okay, well, I can help in whatever way, shape, or form to get us back on board because I do believe in all of the things that we're doing as an organization to help our students across the state. And I do see a huge need. I mean, I'm at the poverty schools, you know, and just the needs. Like if my students want to audition or be a part of any of these adventures, they're going to need some support. And that's one reason why I donate to YME. And it's one reason why I would even give out of my pocket. I'm like, well, what else do you need, kid? Like, I want to see you experience this because it can take you to the next level. So I think more of those kinds of emails, even out to our membership saying, hey, it's time. Would you like to be a part of this great adventure to help our kids see what's possible? Take our up and coming musicians into the real world. Let's give them hope and opportunity. And you can be a part of this. And this is how, and this is where the funds would go to. Like you say, it's food. I'm like, well, yeah, it's food. They're teenagers. Teenagers have hollow legs. They have to
Yeah.
eat every like 10 minutes.
Those 6'5" boys, you know.
So just as a member, I was like, yeah, we need more education into what's going on. I mean, I've been a part of the leadership team, but you know, it's not that real unless you really feel it through like an email or a face-to-face, like you're saying, when you meet your congressman or whatever. But we need that as members too. So yay.
Thank you. Yeah, it's kind of, and the other thing is Allstate, the way it's budgeted, and there's some different ways we can allocate, which I'm open to all of these conversations. I don't think that we necessarily found the nirvana of how to budget for Allstate yet, but Allstate basically in our budget is budgeted to cover the costs. It's not budgeted to pay my salary. It only pays salaries for me for if my time is allocated to Allstate. So like it'll pay for the, the crew that works on the Allstate. It'll pay for renting trucks to move gear and stuff like that. But it's supposed to net zero. So the conference really is the only thing. And yeah, it's quite a game. This is our financial year. It goes like this. And then it just stays down until the next conference, then it goes up again. So, we were thinking of different ways to do that too. And actually, to tell you the truth, the new guy that I hired has already gotten a couple things underwritten for the conference, and we're working on the Allstate side of things for that too. I think that that's a thing. No member is going to come out with $10,000 in a pop, but a combination of members tends to be a higher amount than what we can get from a corporate sponsor. And I think a lot of times when people think that when they talk about fundraising, they say it's something out there. It's not. In fact, if you guys are interested in pursuing this slightly, my favorite fundraiser in the world is Susan Howlett. And she has a website that's called Boards on Fire. And the little introduction video on that website is awesome. And then she has some other ones to get into more nuts and bolts things, but she talks about being a member of a rowing society that's a nonprofit that raises money. And she says most of the people that donate to that society are rowers. It's not outside of the interest. The interest, if it's music, it's going to be music teachers and musicians and people who used to play music or have kids in music. It's not going to be Amazon, although we do have Amazon Smiles. If you order stuff from Amazon and use our link, that donates to WMEA. But stakeholders are the people that are actually passionate about the mission. So that's a thing. Sorry, this has kind of gotten off topic, but it isn't in a way, because part of it is about making Allstate affordable and equitable. And I really do think that, to launch this policy, we took a step backwards, and it is more expensive for kids and districts, but we want to solve that too. And we don't want to get sued. So.
Are there any other questions for Scott or Bruce about things that you had or situations that you've thought of this year, other colleagues that you've been chatting with? Again, they're here to answer questions and help clarify. Give us clarity, not certainty, and just help us gain some insight into the process and what's happening.
And please always feel free to contact me. I will answer your emails and calls. Happy to talk.
I have another question.
Okay.
I'm just going to dominate this whole conversation. If we want to get clock hours for doing other things outside of these kinds of events, like concert band type things where you participate in a community band, is that still possible? This is probably a Bruce question.
Yeah, we do a lot of that kind of stuff. And each one's a little bit unique. So I'd say just send me an email and let's chat. The
Okay.
basic, the basic, the basic threshold of participation that we look for is a minimum of 5 music teachers who would benefit from the experience. So if you've got a group of folks that want to learn together in some way, and we can serve at least 5 teachers, then we make it happen.
Scott, Brian has just asked, are there any thoughts on regionalizing Allstate? Our district is not allowed to have overnight trips currently, and I don't know when that will be lifted. I'm assuming Brian's talking about COVID and such. So, and with Kent and I'm gonna double back on that because I actually just got a text, and this is very, very going to be blunt. So here we go. How are the poor kids going to do Allstate with this policy? Literally, the students on free and reduced lunch. So if you could kind of talk to both of those things.
So the conversations around that will happen as we assess what we've got as far as auditions go. The current plan is to run Allstate like we always have. But there is an open-mindedness that there may be a necessity to make a detour for this year, but none is planned at this point. In terms of the poor kids, I kind of made my pitch. YME is available to them. They can apply for that. As far as I know, we've never turned anybody down that has applied, that participated.
That is true.
There's still a little bit of, with the hotel costs, it's made it a little bit tougher, and we understand that. But that's right now, that's our current solution. And like I said, some of us, I mean, we understand that it's not completely satisfactory yet, but we're working on it. But I do think that that's the strongest positive step that we've done, and that fund has been around for a long time, and I think that there's power there to at least address financial equity. There's some other issues with Allstate that don't get addressed in that as well, and we're looking at those too. So.
We have another question. Small districts who only have 1 or 2 kids qualifying for Allstate, do they have to get 2 rooms, both a chaperone room and a student room for just those 2 people? That'd be a huge expense. And is there any help or assistance with that?
We're not really governing that per se. But let me throw something out here that came up in a discussion. It's possible for them to maybe contact another district, another teacher, and see if they can piggyback on a district that has some other kids coming in.
I can totally see that in normal times, but right now, I mean, that's and I guess that's just a hard one. I mean, we're not requiring. I mean, there's all the different thoughts of that. I guess that's the hard thing with some of our districts can't even leave their own district to go. I mean, that's literally why we're having to do this and not have all of us in one room and then you guys just zoom in to all of us being together. Some districts aren't even allowing districts to come onto their premises at all. So to then house without masks is a whole nother ball of wax. I don't know if that's at all a viable answer.
I would agree that with the I don't know part, we have to kind of check that. But what you're describing is happening around the state. It's not just unique to Green River.
Which part? Sorry, the
The
small district in
districts,
town.
the districts kind of isolating and not letting people into buildings and visitors and guests, and it's a statewide thing.
Mhm.
With
And that potentially is going to have an effect on what we do solo and ensemble wise this year too.
that was my literal next question. Great transition.
We just don't know. So what we're doing right now is we're acting as though everything's going to be normal because we haven't thought of an alternative yet. So because the hope is to have a state contest in April. And the only way we can do that is to have qualifying events. And some regions are all in. They're just planning to hold their events as they always have. But I'm sure there's some regions I haven't heard from yet that, may have to pull the plug on whatever plans they're thinking of right now.
So I guess in the light of clarifying, how, if we can't even demask to sing and perform based on the Department of Health, and they're putting out conflicting reports. One report says on their 5-page thing, if you are performing and actually being active in performing arts, you can demask. And yet there's a whole nother set of K-12 rules that absolutely contradict that. So if we're getting mixed messages or a double standard, how can we do these things thinking that there's any kind of normal? Can't we begin thinking as if this is going to happen in the future, but not under a normal circumstance, but really start trying to flesh out some details of, if this is the new normal, we can't think about normal like it was. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be still providing these incredible opportunities at a state level when every other athletic event still gets to do everything. There is a huge dichotomy between WIAA right now within the state of Washington, and the music students are getting screwed. Like, sorry to throw that one out there. It's bad.
Let me
Sports get to do whatever they want.
Can I jump in on that a little bit?
Yeah.
So there's a lag here, but Ron Gerhardstein is now in the decision room with the Department of Health and letting people know what the situation is on the ground in music classes and things like that. And I think that we have been seeing a little bit of evolution in those restrictions. What would be good if you really have specific examples of those particular rules, it would be great for you to send them to me and Ron, because he is on a weekly meeting with the State Department of Health, and so WMEA it took a while to get a chair at the table, but we have one now. So
Well, and I gave it to my superintendent, and he had a 30-minute conversation with the Pierce County representative, and they came down and said, well, this rule goes for community, and you guys have a different set of rules. And yet we can mitigate some of those safety measures better than our community.
yeah, I think that where Ron is that he's at a higher level than the county. He's with the state, and the state has been open to kind of trying to undo some of that inequity that you're talking about. So if you have those specific things, we want to see them and bring them to the table.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll send them to you as soon as we're done.
All right.
Okay, it looks like some people are having to, continue on with their day. Are there any other questions for Bruce and Scott while we have them here? Awesome. And again, I think they were really open. Please send them emails and continue asking away. Thanks, guys. Bruce, Scott, thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
I just, before I lose everybody, just a reminder, there's a proposed rule change for the state solo and ensemble contest that would take effect in 2023. And we're seeking feedback. Scott spoke to an informed board, and they would really love to hear your thoughts on those proposed changes. And they're posted on our website under the student events tab. I gave Daisy the document. Region presidents have been I've bugged region presidents twice to get that out to teachers. I'd love to hear from you in the next week or so with your thoughts on those proposed changes, because they are significant.
Awesome.
So thank you in
all.
advance.
All right, thank you.
Thanks for being here.
You bet.
Thanks for having us.